I'm Drea.
I'm Meg.
I'm Tina.
And I'm Jess.
And this is Pardon My Stash. Welcome to Pardon My Stash, a podcast about knitting within the fiber arts and how awesome it is. Before we get into today's topics, let's find out what everybody's working on. Drea?
I am working on the Arachne Shawl by Claire Slade or Verily Knits. I am using Plies and Hellhounds, Penny in Flower Moon, and Nightmare. And this is my PMS Matchy Make-Along thing that I'm doing.
Yeah. What a great thing you're doing.
I have
really
even
like
done
that project.
I have even done like 2 rows since the last time we talked.
Ooh. I'm going to give that a round of applause because I know
It's
how
been
much you've
so
been
hard.
struggling. Yeah, so
I started today without the glove, and let me tell you.
oh no.
As soon as I touched the yarn, I was like, nope, that's
Nope.
enough for that.
Not yet. You'll get there though.
Yeah, I know.
But how far are you getting it so far? How much Arachne can we see?
I'm still about halfway through the spider.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh no.
I won't ask you any more questions about it because now we have drop stitches. So let's go to Jess.
I am working on the Between the Dragon and His Rat by Kathleen Sperling. I am at more than halfway through. I'm on the big dragon parts. I'm getting to the part of the pattern that I altered, so we'll see how that looks when it comes out. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, this is I'm doing this in the Critical Hit Dyes Paladin with the colorways Copper Dragon and Thunderwave, and this is my Pardon My Stash Matchy Make Along with Meg. We're both doing wraps.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
I'm still on the hem.
Look,
That's
if it
okay.
really comes down to it, there are 2 dragons on this looking at each other and they match.
It's fair.
So it counts
That
either
counts.
way. So don't feel,
I'm trying.
I would say don't feel
That's
pressured
a lot of
to,
stitches.
there are a lot.
There's
And
a lot of
the
stitches.
start of yours is a lot more, there's a lot more to it than mine was. Basically do garter and then join in the round and hope you didn't twist it. And yours is like, hey, you got to do like 12 rounds and do like a picot and all this other stuff. And before you even start the fun part. So, I mean,
I just want
I
to get
get
to the
it.
color work.
I get it.
One day.
But yeah, otherwise, I am enjoying it. And,
It's quite large.
it's going to be huge. You
It's
do
gonna,
it in
it's
the
gonna
round.
block so big too.
And then you steek it. But you have to steek it first and then block it and then tie off the steeks. So that's going to be like, oh man, I hope nothing happens to it in the interim.
Man, that is
So it's interesting and I get to steek a thing. So that's fun.
that
We're gonna
sounds
get there,
like
so.
anxiety. So moving on from
Right.
Anxietyville.
wait, you can't move on from Anxietyville
No.
and then go to me. That doesn't make any sense.
We're going from Anxietyville to Anxiety City. Okay.
Anxiety City, Anxiety Metropolis, right here.
Metropolis, Meg.
That's me. I'm working on actually a pretty low anxiety project right now. I'm working on my second Calliope by Espace Tricot. I am done with the collar and I'm just working on the raglan increases, and I've done this before, so this is a very no anxiety project. This is just kind of going with the flow. I'm having a rough spring with knitting, and I said this a few episodes ago. This is not my time of year to cast things on, so I'm just kind of going with the flow at this point when I have time to knit, which isn't a lot. I don't know if I've done 2 rows since the last time we talked, because that's how my nights have been going lately.
Well,
It's the end of quarter 3 and the beginning of quarter 4, and grad school has started and just all the things. But the yarn is really nice. It's Fiber Spades Vivacious DK in the colorway Heavenly, and I absolutely love it. So it's a real treat to work with.
it is really pretty.
Thanks.
It really is.
I love this color so much. I want to put it on
purpley,
everything.
bluish,
It doesn't have
pinkish,
it defies description.
iridescent kind of thing
I love it.
going on.
What are you working on?
So for me, I am working on extending my patterns. That's something I wanted to do last year, and I never got to it. for many obvious reasons. So now that I'm feeling a little bit better, I'm trying to, and when I say extend my patterns, give them additional yarn weights is my big thing, because I already have a lot of sizes available in many of my patterns. So being able to do the same pattern in different yarn weights, that makes sense. So for my seed dot, I'm not going as far down as fingering weight because it just won't look right. I've swatched it and it just doesn't have the same oomph as the bulky does. So
I feel like in
things
some
weren't
cases
just
that's,
meant-
yeah.
It doesn't.
It just, yeah.
I am
just
gonna
weren't
I'm gonna
meant to be.
try a DK and see how that goes. I know the worsted looks good because I have the worsted on my head and it came out fine.
It does look good.
But the I'm gonna see what a DK looks like. I have an idea of how to make the DK pop a little bit, but I might stop it at worsted. But we'll see how it goes. So right now I have casting on the super bulky version, which I know is gonna look good, and it's the yarn is something from my stash. Be sure to check out our website, partofmystash.com, for more information as well as pictures regarding our current projects, patterns, and yarns. So for today, we are going to get into an interesting topic. That's what I'll say. Basically, the idea of the usage of the word addiction or addictive type of keywords when we're talking about our yarn stash. And stash is actually one of those words. It can be a reference to, drug usage or addiction. And I've been seeing a lot of talk online about kind of moving away from stash and hoard and yarn addiction and all these different types of terminology. To kind of separate, a true illness, something that people really suffer from, and, the idea of casually maybe overbuying or having a large, collection or what have you of yarn. And I wanted to bring it up to you guys and see what you think about, first, the different types of terminology, and if you think that it might be problematic to use the terms that are related to a potential illness or addiction or anything like that when it comes to our yarn stash.
I don't think the word stash necessarily needs to carry a heavy weight with it. I do think it's problematic when you tie it in with kind of mimicry or ideology of being an addict. Like you brought up buying a lot of stash. If people are joking about addiction, I think that's where it crosses the line into maybe being a little bit problematic. The word itself, I don't necessarily think is problematic. I don't know if you guys agree.
I think it depends on the context.
And the person
yeah,
too, really.
Because I feel like for me, when I thought of yarn stash, I thought of stashing away.
Right. Yeah.
So you're I'm stashing my yarn away.
Same thing with I like hoard because I think of dragons and these are my treasures.
Yes.
And
yes.
And they're neatly packed away, so it doesn't bother me, but I could see how in that context can be different for different people. So I think in that kind of a respect, it's kind of base by base. I don't think it necessarily has to have negative connotations, but you should be aware of your fellow people that are talking about it and use what they prefer if they ask you to, kind of a thing.
I know me personally, when I first started using my account and you're trying to, get, some kind of virality with any of the posts that you're doing, you try to use hashtags that everybody else is using. And at the time, really popular hashtags were yarn addict, yarn addiction, stuff like that. So in my earlier posts, those hashtags are probably somewhere ladled in there. But the more I thought about it, I was like, am I a yarn addict, though? That seems kind of excessive. So I've pulled that from hashtags that I use. I try really hard not to use anything, especially explicitly about addiction.
I just feel like it gets a little dicey, and I feel like it's, especially because there are people close to me in my life that deal with addiction, and I don't want to necessarily like glorify that in any capacity, especially when I know that it's a struggle. I know that there's a hard life with that when you're trying to deal with addiction as a whole. So what about you, Drea?
Like Meg, I really don't see a problem with the term stash. I've always used the word stash, and I've never really associated it with any kind of negative connotation. I've never seen it applied with a negative connotation either. So I've always been very comfortable with calling it my stash because I've accumulated it and I'm saving it for later. But like you, I also don't use the term addiction with anything that I'm doing, because just like in general, because I don't think that I really have an addiction to anything. So I don't think that that's something that I should apply to myself. And I don't think that it should be made light of for people who, like you said, have real problems and have real struggles. And I think that as a community, we should be a little bit more like aware of that.
Well, I think it's a lot like there's, it's kind of like when people say like, oh my God, I have to clean my house, I'm so OCD. And that term gets thrown around very lightly. And the biggest problem with that, I think, is that it kind of pigeonholes what OCD is.
Yep.
And so then that makes it so that people who don't fit into that mold of OCD, if you're not an obsessive cleaner, well, you don't have it. Not realizing that there are many, many different types. But then when you make light of it, when somebody has an addiction, they cannot physically be away from that habit, that activity. Their body goes through withdrawal if they can't do it. If you are somebody that it literally cannot stop shopping for yarn, and that's a legitimate addiction, that's a legitimate problem. And that's not something we should be making light of either. But for most of us, it's just, we really enjoy buying yarn. We really enjoy collecting it. And that's not an addiction. That's just a hobby.
Yeah.
That kind of joke about like collecting yarn and using it are two separate hobbies. And that is true. Some of us just like to collect pretty yarns.
I've definitely gone through phases where, especially when I first started knitting, where if I went someplace and there was yarn, I felt like I had to buy it.
I still do to an extent.
But I don't consider that to be like a real problem.
No.
Because I think it's more FOMO than anything else. What if I never come across this again?
Yeah.
There's that.
That's legit. Yeah.
See, I always feel like I walk through and it's like, especially if it's like a little small business and I really like it. And I'm like, oh, I feel really bad not buying anything.
Yeah,
and I may not buy
support.
yarn now, but I always tend to walk away with something, even if it's just stitch markers, because I just always feel bad like walking around in a small business that may or may not be struggling and like, oh, I got to buy something. But no, I think that's a totally different thing. I think, an addiction is like, where your body is literally hurting if you can't do the habit. And I hope nobody knows what that feels like with yarn or anything, honestly. But if it does, it's certainly not something, people should be joking about. I don't think people intend it to be that way, though. Like I would generally think that a lot of people would be like in your situation, Tina, where they're not really looking at that tag at its face value. They're looking at it the way that everybody interprets it, and they're just thinking like, oh, okay, like I like buying yarn.
Right.
It's supposed to be lighthearted.
Right. They're not looking
Right.
at it, and then you get the people that are like, oh, don't take things so seriously. But, to an extent, it's...
Well, I can also kind of see it starting to kind of put into, because everyone makes such light of it and haha, it's funny and you're addicted to yarn. Some people actually could miss if they are legitimately falling into a problem and not realizing it because it's just yarn. It's not like something heavy, and not realizing because it's taken so lightly that there are instances where that kind of it starts to be a problem. So it is. I can see on that kind of thing too. It's like if you're just constantly making light and making a joke of it, not realizing, oh, it can actually lead to some financial problems or something like that down the line.
Marital problems. Shopping addictions are actually really hard to kind of get a beat on because credit card companies are always willing to give you more credit.
Of course.
And you can just keep going into debt and going into debt and going into debt until
they make more money.
Right. They
have.
prey on that. So it's not like, other addictions like gambling addictions or things like that where it becomes really evident quickly. Shopping addiction you can have for a very long time without realizing that it's really a problem. And I'm going to kind of call everybody out, myself included in this, and that the yarn buying community does not generally try to deter people from having that addiction. It's always like, no, treat yourself.
They do not.
Buy the yarn. You deserve it. But it's like,
I think there
maybe not.
There might be a slight impression of that, again, like how Jess was saying, you don't even realize it's a problem.
Right.
Or the people that are saying that don't think that they have a problem and don't assume that other people might have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But I think shopping compulsion and addiction in general is actually probably, I would say, something that's extremely overlooked.
Yes.
Extremely, yeah.
Because a lot of people don't realize that they have the problem until it turns into like you're losing your house, you're losing your marriage, like something
But even then,
significant.
Do you know
don't
how
even,
many people have a shopping problem or a shopping addiction, and then their justification for it is, but it's not drugs, but it's not alcohol.
At least it's not drugs.
But it's not something that's, society-based worst.
Correct. And you know what? It's something that I've heard people say before about a lot of different things. At least it's not this, at least it's not that.
I mean, I think even all of us have said that at one point in time or another.
I definitely did a lot of shopping in the weeks after my separation and divorce. I was spending a lot of money. I mean, I never went into debt. It was always money I had. It's probably money that could have gone to other things. But I definitely said, I remember my mother calling me out and she's like, no. I'm like, I'm not doing drugs, Mom. I'm not drinking. I'm not going out and hooking up with different people every night. Like, this is tame. And, in hindsight it was, but it could easily have spiraled if I had not found other things to kind of channel my feelings into. It could easily have spiraled into something much worse. So... And I don't think she was trying to be a jerk. I think she was just trying to be like, hang on there, like, hold your horses. But
I mean, I'll be open and honest about it. When I was in North Carolina, I actually have a photo of what my stash started out in North Carolina as. It was 2 bookshelves, 2 little bookshelves. That's all I had.
Tina, you used to have the smallest stash out of all of us.
I did.
And
But
now look at you.
Well, I have to say, I've reduced quite a bit.
You have actually.
I've reduced a lot.
You've de-stashed quite a bit.
Yeah, and if I haven't sold it, I've used it. So actually the purchase I made from you guys is the first I've done in a really long time. I just really like that colorway. I was like, no. But I also have a plan for it.
oh, good.
So that's
Nice, even more.
For me, there's like a difference because like I feel like before it was like I would buy it because it's pretty, and now I'm like, no. Now I actually have like there's a spot for it because
It's got a purpose.
Yeah, but back to when I was in North Carolina, I had 2 bookshelves, and I was not doing well health-wise. When I say I was having a health problem, I mean I was truly having mental health issues. My medication was not correct. I did not have a good support team around me in terms of providers. And if you've looked at my personal Instagram, I do have a significant mental illness that I deal with every day. It's chronic. And the solution that I was doing because of the pure isolation that I was in was buying. And I went from having 2 bookshelves to having a wall.
Yeah.
Real fast. Like maybe within, I would say within a year period, I had filled a wall. And it was because every time I saw yarn that I liked, I was buying, $400 or $500 worth of it. and having a ton of it. It wasn't until I got better, which was after when I came back to Connecticut and I started feeling better. I had a better support system, better medications, better things all around. That I was like, wait a second. And then I put all my stash together and I went, oh my God, how did I end up with this much yarn? And, again, I wouldn't say I got to a point. I can't say that I was not necessarily quote unquote in debt, because there was definitely a point in time that we were paying some interest on purchases that I made that I shouldn't have made. But to say that I was like drowning in it, no. But I think personally, for just to be paying interest on stuff like that is a problem. I shouldn't have been. Like that, I was spending money that I didn't have and couldn't cover. And I joke about it. I joke about my stash. I joke about the size of it, even though now it's turning into this small little. And I'm okay.
Unit.
And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it getting smaller. I don't have a wall anymore.
Well, you don't have that need anymore.
No, I don't, because I'm filling the void that I was dealing with in much different ways, because there is no void.
It served a purpose at the time.
Yes.
And now you no longer need it. So
Correct.
You don't have it.
So I say that because if you are in a similar position, just take a moment to recognize. I'm speaking to my fellow compadres that are dealing with that kind of situation. Just, you don't necessarily have to sit there and be like, oh my God, I'm an addict, or throw some kind of label on it. But there is a situation where you kind of look at it and go, hey, hold on.
Let's take a step back.
Do I actually need all of this? And yes, treat yourself and all of that. But have I treated myself one too many times? And maybe we roll it back. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having a large stash or collection or whatever the heck you want to call it. But I do think there's a problem with it if it's getting out of control, where you don't even know what you have, or you're using money that you don't have, or whatever. It's putting you in a situation
you're using
that you're out of
addict
control.
tactics, like you're hiding it
Yeah.
from people,
Yeah.
or you are
Yeah.
spending money you're supposed to spend on other things
Yep.
on your stash, and those are addict tendencies.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
You can't give up your rent money so that you can have a hobby.
Oh, God.
Right.
no.
Or
Don't
even
do
like,
that.
yeah. But like the whole thing, the whole reason, I think it was Yarn Harlot that said, like, the point of the stash is so that you're not going to the yarn store every time you want to cast on a project.
Correct.
The point of a stash is that if at 9:00 at night you find a pattern you want to knit, you can go to your stash and you can find a yarn in there that
Would work.
will work. It may
Yeah.
not be exactly what the pattern says that you need, but it's close enough.
Yep.
The other problem, I think, and I don't know if this is what you did, it's definitely what I did in accumulating stash. And I don't know if it's what you did. But when you start out, you don't even know what you like.
Nope.
Yeah.
And you are just buying yarns that are pretty without knowing how you like them. And this also contributes to your vast accumulation of stash, because sure, you have 50 skeins of yarn, but you only like knitting with 10 of them.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
you have realized that over time, and you're like, wow, I bought this skein like 5 years ago, and holy hell, I do not want to knit with that, or I'm allergic to it, or so on and
Or
so
in the
forth.
beginning, you get it because you like the colors, not realizing weights are a thing.
Right. Oh, I bought variegated lace weight. I had that in my stash. That was a thing I bought.
Buying
and
things
I don't-
and not even knowing how to utilize it.
No, because you're just like, oh, I need lace weight. I don't own lace weight, and other
should-
knitters
I should have
lace
that.
weight.
I
might want to
did-
knit with that
I
someday.
did that all the time. Where I'd be
Right?
like, I don't have enough DK. How many times do I knit with DK? Not often enough.
Right.
I will tell you that. Believe it or not, the majority of stuff that I would knit with has either been fingering or lighter weight, not even DK, or super bulk. Like, I'm actually at the ends.
You just don't. You don't. Don't have a
You're
nice
on
middle
the
ground.
extremes
So
of both sides.
My stash is full of a lot of stuff in the middle. So like I have a lot. So when I had my full stash, and a lot of the stuff I gave up was worsted, DKs. Like that's what was going. I was
Like
like,
the
no,
stuff
no,
that
no,
you
it's
realize
gotta
you're
go.
not going to use.
Yes, especially the pounds and pounds and pounds of like big box brand stuff.
Right.
Because you think it's not a deal.
It's
if
on
you don't
sale
use
for
it.
$3 a skein. So
Yeah.
let me buy 12 of them, and then you realize I'm never going to use them.
I literally counted. I think I started out with 15 balls of what is it? Something brown hometown.
Oh my God, what was it? Was that Lion, whatever the hell?
Lion
it wasn't
Brand.
Lion. Was it
Lion
Lion
Brand
Brand or was it the
Hometown.
other one?
No, Lion Brand hometown, and it was you saw that stack right of brown that I had.
A lot of brown. It was a
I
good
had-
brown.
So to be fair, I did buy that with the intention of a project, but I way overestimated how much yarn I needed. I initially
How many balls of yarn do we need for a sweater? 40? 40 is
40.
good.
40
I may
yes.
need 40
I mean,
balls.
sweaters use a lot, right?
No, I did. I had originally bought that. This was back in North Carolina.
7,000
This was-
yards of yarn.
And I had bought I had bought it because I was making a prayer shawl for someone that was in my mental health support group.
Okay.
And I wanted to make them a prayer shawl. I needed to make it larger because they were a larger person. I wanted to make sure it could cover them and really get, the comfort of a prayer shawl. So I think out of the, I don't know how many I bought, but I ended up with a remainder of like 11 and a half. And I'm like,
my God.
how did I end up with so then I'm like, how many did I buy? I'm like trying to figure it out. But
That's the thing is, it's just,
Yeah.
it's not even like being willfully ridiculous. It's, you don't know better.
no.
You don't know how much you're, I mean, it's kind of like the first time I knit a scarf, I was like, okay, one ball of yarn. It's going to be enough for a scarf. It was not.
No.
Spoiler alert. It was not enough for a scarf. But you don't know. You don't know how much yarn you're going to need. I still way overestimate every time I make a sweater or a scarf. I always make or dye or buy too much yarn.
Mm-hmm.
But at least then, you can clear it out
Mm-hmm.
and then make way for possibly more that maybe you'll buy with a more discerning eye. And maybe I'll actually knit with these things. And someone else can get the ones that I'm not going to knit with.
Yeah, it's hard because I think again it's one of those things that people will say it casually like OCD or I'm feeling so crazy I feel schizophrenic or whatever, all these different terms, addiction, and you're not thinking about the people that are actually dealing with it.
Right.
And so yeah, sure, obviously ingest, small group of friends. Maybe I don't think there's an issue with that, but when you're like for me, I feel a sort of obligation to post something that's pointed in the right direction, especially with the follower count that I have. Not that I have a lot, but I have a significant amount, enough to be like, I feel like if I were to put things like, if I were to make jokes about addiction or stuff like that, I would feel icky. I would feel like I'm putting out to a large
Right.
group of people.
This isn't something you wanna-
This is the message that you want to be sending.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know if I want to be putting that out as a
Right. Because most
as a
people will
person.
probably not like say anything, but you know what?
It'll feel icky.
It's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that, you know what, I literally just went and checked Critical Hit to make sure that we don't use that hashtag, and we do not use that hashtag.
Good.
So I
Don't
feel a
think-
lot
Good.
better because I was like, oh
Good.
God, have we been doing that?
I didn't think
but I
we
had to
did,
check.
but-
No, but it is one of those things, like I tell my kids all the time, because my kids are, 15 and they love to, use colorful insults in the classroom.
That's a word for it.
That's as nicely as I can
Kids.
put it. And, I always tell them, like, you and your friends may not find those things hurtful, but
Right.
you don't know what everyone in this room is feeling. And do you really want to hurt somebody? And I mean, they're 15, so they're like, oh, but like, I don't know. I'd like
Yeah.
to think that deep down they actually do care. I think most of us wouldn't like to bother people.
We've kind of circled around this, but what do you think? What is too big? Is there a point where it's too big?
If you don't have the storage for the things that you are storing,
Or if you're getting a storage unit type of thing, or you're finding other places to put it?
I definitely think that you have a problem if you have a separate storage unit for your hobby.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the hobby.
Do you know what? As I said that,
I was going to say, like,
agree.
if it's like biking or cars or something like that, like,
That's one thing.
but for yarn, that
feel
might
like
be
if
a
you
little
need a storage
excessive.
unit
Yarn
for
is a little
yarn, that's a lot.
excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like if you can't move in your house because
If people are tripping over the skeins when they come over for dinner.
I mean, I always have a decorative ball of yarn out.
Fair.
Nothing wrong with that.
Like, and it's only decorative because I finished with it and then I didn't feel like doing anything with the remainder.
Okay, but we've all been there.
Yeah.
It's still pretty yarn.
Yeah, it looks nice.
People should enjoy it in its original form, too.
Yeah. But I don't know. There is definitely a visual point of excess.
I feel like if you feel like you need to hide it from family, friends, or significant others, it's time to stop.
It makes me think about the reels where they're like hiding it from their husband.
I hate those reels.
Let's, you know, I'm
just feel
saying
like-
I'm saying husband because it's
usually,
specifically
yeah, it's-
hetero kind of relationship, like a wife hiding from the husband, very pointed kind of
It's
demographic.
But I feel like if it's to that point, are you even enjoying it? And if you're not enjoying it, then it kind of defeats the purpose of
Because I
having
feel like
it.
that's anxiety at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because now
also-
you're like, oh, I'm gonna get caught.
Let's put the shoe on the other foot here, and I'm gonna be that guy. Of there are no reels of the, and again I'm gonna pick something so stereotypically like whatever male of the guy like sneaking his golf clubs into the house. Like nobody makes reels about that.
No.
It's always the little woman hiding her hobby from
Yeah.
the big mean husband that tells her how to spend her money. And that's all really misogynistic and insulting.
Also, can I just
To the
say,
whole couple.
like, men should be sneaking golf clubs in because those are expensive. Like,
Yeah, right. I mean, to be
trying
fair,
to hide that expense
if you
from your
haven't,
wife?
look up some golf club prices, man. It's kind of nuts.
Listen, men, be more
And you need,
shameful
like-
of your golf clubs.
No,
That's the
that was
message
not
here.
what I meant.
I know, but like when men make big purchases or even like
Yeah.
frivolous purchases, they're like, yeah, this is what I did. Like, enjoy this.
The
Look,
inference is that they make
it's
the
okay.
money.
Yeah. It's okay for them to spend their money.
But it's like I don't know. I'm just very like it's not funny. It's not funny to be first off like sneaking around behind your spouse's back. The other thing too, like I feel like that says a lot about the relationship that you have. I will never forget this. Like back when my parents were back when my dad was alive and my parents were living back in their old house, and my mother was trying to move her stash of fabric from one room to the other, and I'm helping her carry these massive bins like down the stairs, and she's like, "Tom, don't look." And I'm like he doesn't know. And he's like, "Noelle, like I don't know that you have all this stash. Like I know how much fabric you have." And
feel like in
she
that-
was joking. But at the same time, like
Some people aren't.
some people aren't.
Yeah.
And if you are like literally afraid to show your significant other the stuff you bought for your hobby, I don't even know if that's a stash problem or a relationship problem.
I would say
Or
there's
both.
two sides of that.
It's
Are you
both.
afraid because you're ashamed of yourself? In which case, maybe look into stopping. And if you're afraid because of what your spouse might do, maybe talk to your spouse.
Yeah.
Either way, I feel like if you're hiding it, that means, again, this is supposed to be a fun hobby. If you're hiding it, like Tina said, now we're getting into anxiety. We're getting into fear. We're getting into, this is no longer a fun, I mean, unless I guess you enjoy the thrill of hiding things, I guess that might
That's
be
also
something.
kind of weird.
It's you know,
That's a little weird unless
I-
you're making
I
something for
guess-
somebody.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of like,
a little weird.
Well, that's a different, like
Yeah.
if you're trying to hide a project you're working on, so somebody
Right.
who's getting gifted it doesn't see it.
Right. That's
whole
different. That's totally different.
That's a whole different thing. We're talking about like we made a purchase, whether it's a Target run, because I don't know why, but they're all Target runs. I have no idea.
Because you step into Target and you only mean to buy toothpaste, and then you walk out with $200 worth of crap, and you don't even know how that happened, but you actually did need all of it. Don't look at me like that. This is my
don't
life.
know.
I don't know. It's never
It's
200.
true.
It's usually 100. It's always stuff that we did need.
See, I'm not that way about Target.
I
I'm that
am.
way
It's
about
awful.
Walmart.
Oh,
I
okay.
am that
So it's
way
same
about
thing.
Walmart.
Yes.
I feel like for example, I went to Walmart. I went to buy, my daughter needed a button up shirt, and we got the button up shirt. We're walking out, no big deal.
And then there was a $5 clearance rack with a beautiful little sweater on it. And I was like, well, that's not going to the dump. That's going on my body. And
Yep.
because that's all for me when I see, especially, that is one thing I am a sucker for when it comes to clearance racks and knitwear. If I see something that's like way underpriced for what it is, I just like, I know you're not going to go to, I don't want you to go to the dump. Let's go. Come on.
That's fair.
Well, I think even clearance yarn, like, I don't think it's a bad idea to like go to sales and stock
No.
up. I mean, I would be a hypocrite. I've gone to the Village Wool sale
Oh, come on.
a couple of times.
Come on now.
We all have.
We
But
all have.
I think that, we all know the thing is if you're not going to use it, you didn't get a deal.
No, that's
If you
correct.
didn't, if you're not,
Yes.
just buying the yarn because it's $5 a skein and you're like, well, I don't know, but I'll figure out something for it. And I'm not saying you need to go in to every yarn purchase and know exactly what that's going to be, man. I change my mind about almost everything that I buy yarn for. This sweater, for example, I've changed my mind about this yarn about 4 times.
True.
But I feel like you should have some concrete idea in your mind of what you could use it for.
Yeah, like either a type of project. Like
Right.
this is going to be a sweater of some sort or garment of some sort. Or this is
Right.
going to be a shawl or this is going to be an accessory.
Instead of buying 40 skeins of yarn and being like, I'll figure it out eventually.
I'll
like,
figure it out later. At a later
that's a lot of
time.
yarn. But that's the thing is a lot. That's why I stopped going to the Village Wool sale, because I did get caught up in that whole, oh my God, this is cheap yarn. And then I ended up giving a lot of it away.
Yep.
And, that's not a deal. That's not a deal at
Yeah.
all.
I am fortunate to say that I pretty much went through. I think I went through almost all. The only stuff that I ended up. There was a couple of types of skeins that I ended up selling. Like I bought way too much cumulus that time.
I mean, it's
But
hard though.
Someone bought all my cumulus. Like almost all my. I think there's a couple skeins left of the dark blue on my Yarn Saver site, but the teal cumulus is gone. Like someone.
It's the siren call of that really nice cotton.
It's
Like you
so
can't
nice.
touch it and
It
then
is
not
really
buy
nice.
pounds of it. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's
yeah.
really hard.
But the idea that I had originally with that was a sweater. Mm-hmm. And then I went, this is gonna pill
Yeah.
to no
And
end.
stretch.
And stretch.
Cotton stretches.
Well, I saw what happened to your cardigan because you used cotton with that, not cumulus, but
Not
it was
cumulus,
a cotton
but
base.
It was cotton.
and
and
cumulus is has a higher micron count,
Yes.
so that would have pilled and stretched.
Yes.
So
There'd
I
be no
do
coming
have-
back from that.
I do
Double
have a
whammy.
shawl made out of cumulus, and it has not started billing yet. Like I take very good care of it, but I feel like it will not last forever.
But the type of stitches that you did on that shawl, though,
Yeah.
are very how do I say this? Like a very
Structured.
safe use of that yarn.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if it was flatter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it has texture on it. I think
does.
the texture will
Right.
help protect the yarn a bit
Yeah.
from the pilling.
I
I feel like
agree.
if it was flatter, it would pill a lot. But
And it's also not like a garment. It's not
No.
getting all that
Right.
friction. It's not
Correct.
It's not moving.
It doesn't
all
have
that much. It
armpits
kinda just
or-
chills there.
Yeah.
yep.
No, I have a scarf made out of cumulus and it hasn't pilled at all either. It's but again, it's outerwear, so
Right.
I think it can hold up a lot more. But yeah, you kind of try to be realistic when you're buying that sale yarn instead of just thinking, I will totally use
totally
20
gonna use some of
balls of this navy blue acrylic.
Safe to say that if I guess this is just if you feel like that you're in a place that you might be having an issue with your yarn buying, then take this as a note to just kind of do a self check and make sure that you're in a good place. And if you don't feel like you're in that place, but you are using terminology that may be problematic, maybe we just avoid using, I would say, illness terms, because that's really what it comes down to. Is we're talking about illnesses.
It's ableist.
It's very ableist to kind of toss those terms without really thinking about the people that are getting affected by them. That's it for this episode. For additional content and opportunities to connect with the cast, check out our website at partofmystash.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more laughs, tears, and Drea
Hey, that's me.
at Pardon My Stash.